Aid plays a vital role when conflicts threaten human life and destroys the result of many years of development. Development aid is aid given to poor countries to promote economic and social development, whereas humanitarian assistance seeks to alleviate suffering in the short term. The distribution of aid in Sri Lanka has not always been straightforward. Previously, it was thought that one could distribute aid to conflict areas without thinking too much about the dynamics of the conflict. This happened after the tsunami in Sri Lanka, when several countries provided aid to conflict areas. Sri Lanka was one of the hardest hit countries in the 2004 tsunami. The word tsunami is perhaps now forgotten by many of us, but the tsunami actually crushed many people's lives in Sri Lanka. A positive outcome of the tsunami was that several countries all over the world united to help out Sri Lanka. And some of the divided groups in Sri Lanka began to work together. The peace and conflict researcher explains how people across religious and ethnic affiliations actually began to help each other.
That supernatural force has, metaphorically saying, told the two communities or three communities that, look, there's an opportunity. You all have to work in a different manner. It's like when you have, it's very difficult to develop a compromise for a value conflict unless you develop a subordinate value. So this supernatural force provided us a space to develop that subordinate value. International community was with us, all the parties. I know that for first 10 days, the communities, not the state, communities helped each other. None of the civil society organizations or state able to address or intervene for this humanitarian disaster. It was people to people contact, right? It took at least 10 days, at minimum of 7 days, for intervene these organized institutions like state, the NGOs, INGOs to the scene. Up to then, all the people to people interacted, helped, saved, rescued, provided shelter, etc., etc.
The cooperation did unfortunately not last long, as the promise of aid from the international community brought with it a fear by some that the money would fall into the wrong hands.
Unfortunately, the Western people do not understand the LTT mindset. Because of that, they genuinely thought we can channel aids to the tsunami affected people through the LTT. They don't know, LTT are the people who grab everything possessed by the innocent Tamils for their benefit. So whatever the material benefits given to the LTT to pass to the tsunami affected people has not been done so. It was the classic example of the Wakare liberation operation. During that time, our forces found lot of camp sheds, food items, tents, medical equipments, medical supplies given to the LTT to pass to people have been stuck in their camps for their use. And when we talk to the people, they have not received anything but has been trying to channel through the LTT.
The international community compiled a PTOMS agreement, which saw cooperation between the government of Sri Lanka and the LTTE on the reconstruction in Sri Lanka after the tsunami. It was in particular Sinhala Buddhist nationalists that were consistently against any cooperation.
The mechanism that the two entities, that is the state and the LTT, negotiated was that Petom's agreement was sabotaged by these political entrepreneurs. So that led for this present situation. So this is a direct outcome. The present day is a direct outcome of that, our inability to resolve the Petom's mechanism.
The tsunami money that was coming was expected to be shared between the north and east and the south. And what we were hoping was that there would be a structured way whereby this sharing could be worked out. And P-Toms was one of those things that could have done that. But the fact remained that P-Toms could not be worked out because the Supreme Court held that it was illegal and it was a body outside the Sri Lanka Constitution. At the same time, there were politicians who took the money. I mean, there are various stories of very, very senior politicians, some of them very, very important people who took the money for uses other than tsunami relief. So on the one hand, there was structural discrimination in the way these monies were going to be dispersed to the north and east and the south. At the same time, politicians, for their own interests and in keeping with their own ambitions, broke some of the money and saw to it that those monies didn't reach where they did. And the third thing is that we also know that some of the money that came for tsunami relief was used for purchases of arms by the Sri Lanka government.
It is easy to forget that the distribution of aid actually has an impact on the dynamics of a conflict, whether we intend to or not. The aid worker explains that we should always carefully consider the potential negative consequences aid can have in countries affected by conflict.
I think the role of donor organisations and particularly international organisations within the conflict in Sri Lanka is extremely complicated and requires very careful analysis of the situation and the context within which you're working before you begin working in Sri Lanka. It is an extremely complicated country, even in terms of geography, in terms of climate. There are 7 or 8 climatic zones in the country. It's not a very big place. There are at least 8 or 9 different target groups, ethnic groups, religious groups that you could identify within the country. And most of these have some concerns or some conflict with another group. So to come into the country and work within the country, you have to have a thorough understanding of the context within which you're working to ensure that whatever you do doesn't create more harm than it does good. And certainly in terms of the response following the tsunami, I think one of the key lessons that should be learnt is that organisations simply didn't take enough time to understand the context within which they were working. And in Sri Lanka's case, it was a complex conflict, ceasefire situation onto which a natural disaster was overlaid and into which then organisations rushed almost with their eyes closed to try to provide assistance. And there's a great danger if you do that and you're not aware of the context within which you're working, that your assistance will actually create more problems or create more harm than it will do good.